Aloha, Richard Halverson here. This is ITS 128, and today we're going to start on the Chapter 8 projects. So if we go to our assignments page, let's go back to Chapter 8, and I'm going to start with the programming project here. So let's take the first one. Let's take a look at it. And it's right here. Okay, so in this problem, we're going to write a function that will sum up all the elements in a specified column in a matrix. Okay, and this is going to be how we call the function. Hold on, I have to sneeze here. All right, false alarm. All right, so in this example, for example, we have a 3x4 matrix. So it's and we enter in 3 rows by 4 columns, and so this is how we enter them in. This is going to be the first. This is the first column. This one and this one and this one is the first column, and then this is the second column. This one and this one and this one. This is the third column. This one, and this one, and this is the fourth column. And so what this program is supposed to do is you enter in a 3-row by 4-column matrix, and then it prints out the sum of column 1, the sum of the first column, which is column 0, the sum of the next column, the sum of the third column, and the sum of the fourth column. All right. So so to do this, okay, so I'm going to create a new. I'm going to create a copy of this program, or a copy of this information here. I'm going to copy this information out. Copy, and I'm going to put it in here with some comment codes around it. And I'm going to save this as on the desktop as test.py. All right, so so now to do this problem, we're going to need to know. Let me go back to the table of contents here and chapter 8. And what are the important parts that we're going to need to know? Well, let's look at processing 2-dimensional lists. And this is a very good video note. It doesn't take very long, 5 minutes. You should watch that. And this gives a nice description of how we reference each of the elements in the array. And this is where we initialize. Now, in this example here, first we declare the matrix. We're going to have to do that. And then this thing reads the number of rows and the number of columns, and then it has 2 loops. There's an inside loop for the column, and then there's an outside loop for the row. So for each row, it asks for all the values for that row, 1 column at a time. And so it inputs it 1 by 1, and it appends. So here we actually create a new. We add a new row that's empty, and then the row is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3 or whatever, and then so matrix row. Here we append values 1 by 1, 1 column at a time, onto that onto this row. So, but we're not going to do it that way. We're actually going to do it more like this, where we read in wait a minute, no. This is after we have the columns, this is going to loop for the columns. This is actually how we sum up the columns. And we aren't going to need to do this outside part. Our function is going to go one row at a time, and the actual column is going to be specified as a parameter. So you see in this here, so we can start this out, copy this. This is the first, and then here we're going to do some sort of adding up like this. Probably more like this. I'm going to copy this and put this here. And so here we're summing up what we're going to return. And for each row in M, okay, so the matrix that comes in is M. So this has actually got to be M right here. And this length, this is the number of rows in M. If we just take the length of M for a two-dimensional matrix, it's going to assume that it's a list of rows. So M is a list of rows. This is the first row, this is the second row, this is the third row. There's 3 rows. And so this is going to look for the length of M, which is the number of rows in M. So this is going to say row in the range of, 0 to 3, or 0 to 2, basically. And then this is M again. And this is actually column index. So here we are looping through these rows and adding to that for each row what the value is in this particular column. So if column is 2, let's say column index is 2, so it's going to be 0, 1, 2. Then what this is going to do is it's going to loop through all the rows, all 3 of these rows, each time adding up for row 0, row 1, and row 2. It's going to add up this index, which is this one right here, and it's going to sum that up, and that's going to equal total. And then I guess that's it. So we're going to return total. So right here we would return total. Okay, so anyway, that looks like that is our function, but we need to add all this other stuff around it. So the thing is, the more difficult thing we have to do here is to create this M array that we're going to pass in. And so we're going to have something that looks like matrix equals, we have to initialize this matrix. And then we already know that it's going to be 3 rows. Okay, so so we can just have our for loop here, because we're going to read in, we're going to execute this line 3 times from 0, 0, 1, and 2. I just want to make sure I'm recording here. Yes, I am. So I can go for row in, well, I can do the same thing as this. Oh, no, I can't. No, for row in range of 0 to 3. So that's 0, 1, and 2. I want to do, I want row to equal some input where I say this: enter a 3x4 matrix row, enter a 3x4 matrix row, and let me add this row is going to be integers, and we want a string version of that. So let's just do this, make it cleaner. And then we got to put this colon thingy at the end here. So I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so this is going to input the row separated by spaces, and then we need to append that onto the matrix. How do we do that? Well, let's see. Let's go back to our book, and I'm going to go back to, let me see, what's next? Passing two-dimensional list functions. Okay, if we look at this first example here, for row in the range of rows, guess I could, we know it's 3 rows. This inputs the row, just like what I did. And then this code, whatever that is going to append that row onto the matrix. Okay, so this creates an empty matrix. This reads in some number of rows, and in our case it's just 3. And then this is going to loop for the range of the number of rows. And in our case, it's going to range from row equals 0, row equals 1, row equals 2. And then it's going to request this, and it's going to input the string, and they're going to be separated by spaces. This doesn't say that. Well, I'll tell you what, let's see what the answer to this is. I'm going to click answer here. And okay, so this is what it was inside. It's one of these definition of a list like this, where for x in S, for all the s's in it, for all the numbers that were typed in, for all the x's, we want a floating point version of them. So let's see, hold on here a second. All right. So we're going to want something that looks like this. I'm just going to copy this here. Copy. And I'm going to go back to here and see what does it look like. Okay, yes, I'm going to append, I named the matrix the same. I'm going to append this onto the matrix. And you recall this matrix, a two-dimensional matrix, a list matrix, it's a list of rows. So for the first row, it's going to append that on, and that'll be the first row. And then it's going to come around again, and it's going to append the next row, and it's going to append the next row. So we read in a row at a time, starting with 0, 0, 1, and 2. And then it's going to be a bunch of, or it's going to be this. This is 4 numbers separated by spaces. So that's how the split works. If you don't put any argument inside these parentheses, it splits by a space. So this is gonna be a list of x's. This is the first x. This is the second x. This is the third x, and this is the fourth x. And for each of those x's, we want a floating point version of it. So this here is going to be a list of the 4 elements here as floating point numbers, which is what we want, because later on we're going to add them up. And to add them up like this, they need to be numbers. And since we're entering in a number here that's got a decimal point, it has to be float instead of integer. All right, so this will take care of reading in the matrix. And so this will read in the matrix, and then we need to loop one column at a time, calling this function. This function will return a total for that column. So let's loop the columns. For column in the range of 0 to, now how do we find the length of len? That's the length of a list. If we just look for the length of m, we get the number of rows. So if we want the number of columns, assuming that all of the rows have the same number of columns, we can ask for the length of one of the rows. So the length of one of the rows, namely the first row, let's say, length of matrix 0, because it's that's the first row is going to be matrix of 0, and the length of matrix of 0 is going to tell us the number of columns in the first row, and that's what we're looking for. So this is going to loop through a variable called column, and it's going to loop through 0, 1, 2 through however many columns there are in the first row, which is the number of columns in all the rows. So for that, I'm going to print this thing, this, and here I can just use I don't have to use the plus sign, I can just use the comma. So sum of elements in column, because we're talking about this variable here, is space is, comma, and then it's going to be this function. So sum column, and the matrix that we're going to sum is called matrix. That's what it's called out here. Out here it's called matrix. In here it's called M, but out here it's called matrix. So when we pass the argument, we use what it's called out here. So the sum of this column, the sum up this column of this matrix and return that number. And that's what this does. This takes this matrix and this column, and it loops through all the rows, adding up each of those values in that column for each of those rows, sums it up into a variable called total, and it returns that. And that's what's going to come back here. All right? I think this might work. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to pull up a prompt, CMD, and I need to go to my path, which is right up here. So it's going to be cd desktop / is that it? Yeah, there's my test.py. So I can just do Python test.py, and I got an error. Okay, so it's having a problem with line 9, and line 9 is a comment. Oh, it's not a comment. Well, oh, line 8. Sorry, oops, line 8, and line 8 is this. So there's a character in here that it doesn't like. I happen to know that it's this. Doesn't like that character. So I'm just going to replace it with I'm going to rewrite it with X. It's a little bit different size. That's because it's a different coding, and our little Python program here doesn't like different coding, different kinds of character coding. So that should fix it. Let's try it again. And we still have a problem. Indent does not match the other indent. Okay, so this one, is that the one that didn't like? For row in range. This. Maybe I got to do indenting, isn't that right? Oh, this doesn't look like it's indented properly. Backspace, enter. Yeah, see this little funny character there, that tells me that I'm using tabs. That's crazy. All right, let's try this. Is it all? Okay, let's try this. Save, run. Okay, enter a 3x4 matrix row. Now, when I notice how I'm going to add this. Okay, the only reason I say this is because in the final project, which I will as soon as I'm done, I think I'll probably tell you about the final project after I'm done with these projects. But to enter in a whole string of numbers, that's what I want to do. I'm going to copy this here, copy, and then over here, click. I'm just going to do, see if this works. Oh, there, paste. I just do a right click and it pastes it. Then I can enter. Uh-oh. Name S is not defined. Oops. Let's see. What did I not do? I read this. Oh, this should be. Oh, wait a minute. I can't do this. This is a number. And this says that. No, this has got to be the string. That's S, the string. Okay. That's this. And that's this. Because this input's a string. And this here is a number. All right, so that should fix that. Let's try this again. Up arrow. Enter the first one, and that's going to be copy, right click, enter. That's the first row. The second row is copy, right click, enter. That's the second row. And the third row is copy, click, right click, that. Press enter, and it says the sum of the elements for column 0 is 16.5, 9.0, 13.0, 13.0, 9.0, 13. Okay, so that looks like that works, and I'll let you confirm that works, and if you've got to type it all in correctly, and that should do it for project 8.1. Thanks for watching.